Thank you, Tanya. It's my pleasure to be with you. The last time I stood in this hall, we made a very simple argument. Don't solve small problems, solve big problems. Want to change the world? Then change the world, and not over the next 200 years. I love being in a Canadian audience, so half of you are not even sure that you want to change the world 2 minutes ago, even though you're in an event that says change the world. So I don't want to revisit this argument about you should want to be ambitious, you should want to be aggressive, you should want to do something of scale and significance, and you want to do it now. I take for granted that that is the case. I want to move the argument on. I want to do more of the how you would actually get this accomplished, not just that you want to do it. So let's just start with the word entrepreneur. Entrepreneur, this is about social entrepreneurship, but let's start with the word entrepreneur. It has a very distinctive connotation, does it not? It comes with words like motivated, passionate, committed, inner-directed, motivated, obsessive, change agent. Notice, all those words, psychological words, states of emotion, dissatisfied, tolerant of risk, all about you as a person, you as a character, you as a personality. Let's talk about social entrepreneurship. Whoa, we notch the rhetoric up a bit, do we not? Now we're not just committed, we're not just determined, we're not just inner-directed. We are crusaders, we are reformers. We're going to change the world. We're a real agent of social change. We're social activists. Whoa! Just listen to all of those words. All about emotion, about your personality. Oh yes, and now on top of it, when we get to social entrepreneurship, we put another layer. Moral righteousness and the moral high ground. Goodness, that's a whole ocean of emotion. And I want to talk about the words missing. Let's talk about the words missing. Don't you look at me and tell me, yo, that's a surprising view of entrepreneurship that I've just given you. No, you've heard all of those lovely sounding words about character and determination and risk tolerance and all that. And you've heard the word crusader. Yes, you have. And you have heard the word reformer. And what word have you not heard? You know what word you haven't heard. Or words you haven't heard. Smart. Crafty, intellectual, rigorous. Notice, see, look, don't tell me that when I say the word entrepreneur and you suddenly think a really, really smart person. No, you think a really, really committed person. And I'm going to say, wait a moment. Let us now stop. Change your mind. We're talking about minds. We're talking about your intellectual abilities. So if you thought I was going, oh dear. With all of this, I'm wired here. I must glow in the dark. Let's try. Oh, well, we've pulled it off entirely. Okay. Oh, so I've started now. Nothing's going to stop me. So get it. No, I have not here come to celebrate on social entrepreneurship. So if you think I'm going to say you should change the world, I'm not going to. If you think I'm going to celebrate the success of charities, I am not. I'm going to criticize them. See? And some of you already think, whoa. Why is he criticizing charities? They have good intentions. And you really think good intentions should excuse stupidity? You try and your professors, I intended to get a good grade in this course. And see how far that gets you. But don't try that argument when we're talking about charities. Because I will hold them to the same standard I would hold a business enterprise, or I would hold a student. Are you getting something done? Are you effective? Are you accomplishing what you set out to do? And is it an accomplishment that's not wimpy? So don't ask me to celebrate you if you've done something which any normal person could do in the normal course of their activities. Okay, I'm alive. Well done. I'm not going to celebrate that you're alive either. In semi-functioning. There are people who criticize any kind of entrepreneurial program at a university. They just don't really think it belongs here. First, they don't get the social part, but then they say, well, it should be in a business school, or it should be a school of social endeavor, a whole school about charity, but not in a university. What do you mean not in a university? It is because they do not understand that if you're going to be an entrepreneur, social or commercial, you are going to do the most intellectual thing you can possibly do, assuming, of course, you're going to do it successfully. Yes, it is. It's intellectual. Your brain has to fire on many different cylinders. You can be a brain surgeon and not still be an entrepreneur, because brain surgeons have to focus on one thing. To be an entrepreneur means you've got to parallel process. It means you have to juggle multiple things. You have to think all sorts of things. You have to do some of them simultaneously. It will hurt your head. And then just when you think you've got something done, something will come unglued, and you'll have to redo it again, and you'll be pissed off, and now you're going to have to control your emotions. And you're going to have to use your higher brain power to override the fact that you are angry about something, or you are unhappy or disappointed about something. It is intellectual. It cannot be the most, it is the most intellectual thing you can do. And now this evening, you're going to challenge all the goofy ideas you have had in your head that you are not thinking about. You want to challenge your assumptions. Everybody knows that you should challenge assumptions. Everyone knows. Philosophy 101. Challenge the ideas in your head that sneak into your head while you're not looking. That's what society does. That's how it takes you young and, eager, trying to do something. And slowly but surely it dummies you down by sticking ideas in your head you do not critically examine. And then one day, 3 years after someone stuck the idea in your head, you speak it as if it is absolute truth, and only a fool would actually doubt it. So that's what we're going to do this evening. We're going to look at some of the things you think you half know, but you have not critically examined, that have to do with charitable endeavor. So, change your mind. You want to really change the world? Or at least as a Canadian, speculate about the possibility you might, under some vague circumstances, change the world. Well, if so, then you're going to have to examine the things between your ears, some of those ideas, half ideas, those strange thoughts that you have not examined. Because until you examine them, you will never make a big change in the world. You won't, because you're not prepared to think about it. And if you're not prepared to think, this isn't going to happen. Good intentions are not enough for any kind of entrepreneur. So, let's start with a few of the things people half believe. Because you've got to change your mind, but you also might have to change your opponent's mind. Oh, you're all happy because you know your opponent is making a mistake. If only stupid companies were more environmentally sensitive, the world would be a better place. So I'm going to have to change their mind. You might. But here's the thing about changing someone else's mind. What if your mind is a chaos? So maybe we shall start with your mind, and then hopefully you have the chance, excuse me, that you could change somebody else's mind. Doesn't that sound like a plan? Unless you believe your mind is in a pristine, perfect condition. Good. No one's raising their hand, at least. So we're getting somewhere. So now, let's just examine some of the common assumptions that have to do with the charitable world. Human nature. Ah, yes. You know the cliche. Human nature. Your inherent characteristics as a human person are almost unchangeable. Human nature, if it changes at all, changes at glacial speed over centuries. So there is an inherent constraint in all social enterprise, because trying to change human behavior is notoriously difficult, probably impossible, almost certainly near futile. So you should accommodate the fact that you have these constraints. Or, by contrast, human nature, plastic. Human nature. People, puppets of their environment. So if you stand back as a social engineer and manipulate the levers of society, you can make people do anything. Now, don't you actually think both of those are like rather weird ideas, because they're on two extreme cases. On one hand, you can do anything with humans because they are sheep-like, puppet-like things, or humans are the stubbornest brains locked in concrete. By the way, Karl Marx thought human nature was plastic, moldable. He was going to create the perfect man. So you're a charity. Does this make you a communist if you're trying to change human behavior? Society will not thank you for being a communist trying to change human behavior. Or are you a practical realist who believes that human persons are nasty, brutish, and if given half a chance, they'll kill the other person unless you use the power of the state to constrain their evil, wicked, greedy, selfish, short-termed behavior? Now, I think you better figure out which of those two assumptions you think. Oh, yes, and now you're the Canadians going into the default position. I believe of both of them a little bit. You can't believe of both of them a little bit. You can't be infinitely malleable and totally stubborn, you can't change anything, and say, I stand right in the center, because then you're intellectually incoherent. So like we're trying to be, this is about intellectual. So you have to make some judgment about human behavior. You have to decide what you really think about it. You have to probe it. You have to assume that maybe those two views are utterly simplistic. Most assumptions are. Simplistic, glib overgeneralizations, which are half true. But it's not the compromise position. You have to actually decide what it is you think about it. So if we look at human behavior and try to understand what we might or might not do, well, life gets interesting. Because I can give you examples of profound changes in human behavior. I can take a person, I can take a whole society addicted, chemically addicted. Now that's about as human nature as you can get, where the chemistry in your brain has been altered by your insane, irrational behavior, and you are now trapped in a pattern of addiction, supported by the society and profiting by the government. A lot of power, don't you think, to make you not change. And in my lifetime, boom, sucking on cancer sticks has suddenly retreated to a minor part of the population. So wait a moment. Addictive behavior, chemically addiction. Humans can overcome addictive behavior, chemically addictive behavior. Whoa, it means we can do anything with them. No, we didn't quite conclude that. We concluded that in some circumstances, in the right circumstances, with powerful agents of change pushing it, you can change what looks like ingrained behavior, chemically ingrained behavior, chemically tracks in your brain behavior. But well, that makes it more complicated, makes it more interesting. So if you don't like complication, oh my, then don't try to change the world will change you. Because you're not going to understand anything. So human nature, what else might be human nature that we need to examine critically? Oh, yes, gender. Don't you, oh, now they're listening. Gender. See, now they're thinking, oh goodness, he's going to talk about gender. Now, I'm going to have to be careful about my reaction so that I don't laugh if he's making a sarcastic comment in case I look like I'm insensitive. So now, I have a whole room of people. Oh, for goodness sakes, now we're all standing on political correctness. Must be careful, because this is dangerous territory. Maybe he's only going to say one thing about gender and move on to something safer. I thought we were going to challenge assumptions. I thought you were going to get intellectually uncomfortable, and I'm going to make you intellectually uncomfortable. Oh no, or emotionally uncomfortable. Oh yes. Look, why don't we just say what's true? We live in a world, excuse me, in which gender is a big deal, which gender-oriented behavior is a big deal. So what? We're going to just dance around it? We're going to dance around the fact that half the population is at severe risk of disadvantage, and it's actually getting worse? That they're slowly and irrevocably being pushed out of positions of power, influence, and money? And that they will become economically obsolete over the next 30, 40 years. We are supposed to ignore that? Well, I hope you don't want to ignore that. And who are we talking about? Who are we talking about? Who are we talking about? Gender-sensitive young persons. Yes, we're talking about stupid males. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about dumb males. Dumb males, I'm sorry. Males are the endangered gender. We need programs that are affirmative action for males so they don't end up all on the streets or in the prisons. You think not? The ratio, men to women in the prisons. Canada, which imprisons, we have a government that likes imprisoning people, mainly males. Males that can't stay out of jail. Males that can't get out of high school. Males that can't get out of college. They can't get in sometimes, never mind get out. Males. And some university programs have trouble getting in because our high school marks are too crappy. And whole university classes are becoming female. Oh, now, Is your trusty obstructor, is your trusty prof of the evening suddenly going to decry that women are going to soon be the majority of the physicians of the country? Is he actually going to, but he sounds like he sort of was. Should medical schools require a proportion of males? Oh, don't you think we need to think about some of these things? Don't you think we need to stop thinking simplistically about gender roles? Don't you think we need to worry about men? Don't you think we should worry about men? Yes, said the male, nodding. Yes, well, okay. Or is someone else having a bad thought?
I mean, I'm in engineering, so the gender ratio thing there is still pretty much the other way.
Yes, it is. There certainly are. There are certainly parts of the university where males still survive. Yeah, well, there is. I mean, this is not a bad thing. That's not a bad thing. But just notice that you need to think about this more carefully. You can't just do glib assumptions about it. So yes, males at home in engineering, the only place that welcomes them now. Except it turns out that the female dean of engineering is trying to get more women to come to engineering, with some small success. Now, I sense a bad thought. I sense an emotional thought in the room. Well, that's an oxymoron. I sense emotion in the room. Thoughtful, and emotion do not go together. And there may be an occasional woman who thinks, what? I'm insensitive to the fact that even in Canada, there are women at risk of being physically assaulted. Have I suddenly tried to turn the spotlight from women in genuine distress to stupid males? No, I'm not. I'm trying to say stupid males and women in distress. It's part of a package. It's part of trying to understand your complicated world. And if you have silly assumptions about gender, you're going to miss the boat. You're going to fail to understand that legions of males are at risk of economic obsolescence. And that even in Canada, large numbers of women are still physical risk. You know what? It might mean society has a lot of problems and better fix them all. But some glib assumption about the favored gender and who's more oppressed than someone else. Excuse me, who's more oppressed? It's not about who's more oppressed. It's who's in distress, man or women, and are you doing something about it? And are you thinking about the distress rather than just painting all men as heroes or animalistic morons and all women as heroines? Heroes, sorry. I used this sexist term, my apologies. Well, we've reached the stage now where language is even interfering with our ability to think. Gender and gender roles. Need to think about them carefully. It's all part of human nature. So now, we could argue that men and women in part of the world, including this part, have more collaborative, more equal relationships. Partly why males are under such distress, because they're being knocked off their unquestioned status as top dog and now have to earn their place in the world, which all in all doesn't seem like a bad plan. But why do when students come into my office, they often come in couples? I do couples therapy. This is very strange for me. Well, I do this. I've been here for a long time. I've been doing career counseling for 30 years. For 30 years, students have sought my guidance with respect to jobs. And I, who have never found a subject he wouldn't have an opinion on, will talk about jobs and career strategies. And then, remarkably enough, started about 15 years ago, they come by twos, man and woman, and they want to talk about their joint career strategy. I'm thinking, my goodness, the world has changed. I'm thinking, my goodness, could this be civilization? Where both partners come in, when they're doing this as couples nearing graduation, this looks like they're going to hang together for a while. This is not a temporary arrangement. So they want to talk about this. How they can pursue careers together, how they cannot sacrifice one career for the other. One has a job offer in one place, one has a job offer on the other side of the world. This might be a complication. How might it be addressed? So yes, so we talk about that. It's civilized. I listen to them talk respectfully to each other. Isn't it great how social norms have changed, how we are now more civilized, how we recognize the inherent value of the other gender? Or is it because, another assumption, the marketplace rules? You social reformers, you can preach all you want, but the market will have its way. The alternatives to the market system are gone, and the market will dictate your life. So you want to do the social purpose, then you find a way someone can make money on it, and that will create a way to change the world. So are all those men and women in my office all talking so politely and collaboratively to each other? Well, because the males in particular have recognized that the female person in the office has at least as much earning power as they do. And if they want to have like a nice, comfortable middle-class life, they must speak respectfully to the other person who's bringing in at least half the income. And the woman looks at the guy thinking, okay, well, you know, he'll carry half the mortgage. That's what's fueling our more civilized view of gender behavior. Do you understand, ladies and gentlemen, how complicated this starts getting when you're trying to change the world? Gender is an important behavioral characteristic. How could it not be? And there's another assumption. Are we trying to override the market? Are we trying to save the environment by shutting companies down? Or are we trying to engage the power of the commercial marketplace to make things better? The commercial marketplace, the earning power of women, has most certainly caused enough people to at least think carefully about gender. Since speaking disrespectfully to the person who's paying half the mortgage might not, in fact, be a good plan. And once you get used to treating someone respectfully, you might actually conclude, well, you know, maybe this is what I should do, just as a matter of principle. What drove the change? These are all questions you have to ask yourself, questions you have to wonder about. Assumptions about gender behavior and human nature that you have to challenge. And the marketplace. Let's talk about the marketplace. Let's talk about whether the marketplace is what we should use. Some of you think yes. Some of you think no. Yes, most of you think sort of. Sort of not is a good answer. When do we use it? When do we not? Sometimes it happens accidentally, as with women entering the labor force. Sometimes it happens with malice of forethought when you create it. Ah, yes. You engineers, you know how we're going to save the environment. Oh, in your heart, you know. You're a little uneasy about saying it because, you know, it might offend the greens in the room. Let the techies know how. Carbon capture. Yes, yes, drive your car all around in circles. Stop worrying about driving, man. Don't have to buy a Tesla, cool car that it is. Just, you know, you can spew carbon dioxide all over the crazy place. That techie there is going to suck it out of the air and put it down under the ground, and it'll be perfect. You burn the carbon, he captures the carbon. It's a perfect cycle of nature, like, you know, the circle of life, and we'll all sing. Well, you see, what is the role of technology? How is technology supposed to make all of these things happen or not happen? So technology is going to save us? Or technology will destroy us? There he is. He's the carbon capture character. He speaks only softly because he knows the environmentalists view this as like the plague. He knows, they think, that he is the great excuse. So he says technology will deal with global warming. You know, so we'll either capture the carbon or we'll capture some of the carbon. And what is with this silly business of the oceans rising because of, you know, too much rain, the ice melting. We just build a big dike around New York. I am an engineer. I know how to build damn dikes. Well, I'm sorry, but on the other hand, there's a flavor of that which would excuse taking aggressive action to protect the environment because the techies will just all fix it. Oh, okay, it'll be a little expensive, but oil's so cheap now. What does it matter? What does it matter? That gas guzzler I was going to buy, but the marketplace was going to make too expensive for me. So now, okay, a carbon capture person, just go capture that carbon and I get my gas guzzler and it will be all okay. But you see, ladies and gentlemen, how this is not thoughtful. This is just bouncing around with like glib assumptions about the marketplace this or the marketplace that. So, you techie you think the marketplace will make this a wonderful world, do you? Okay, let's look at my beloved Silicon Valley. You will know, spending all this time at the University of Waterloo, that I've got Silicon Valley spies from the top of California to the bottom of California, and I know what they're up to. There is that profit power machine. It has not found something trivial it could not figure out a way to make money from. And you know that. And words of Peter Thiel, the co-founder of PayPal, another one of life's essential characteristics. We thought we were going to get flying cars, and instead we got 140 characters. So there it is, Silicon Valley pumping out consumer application after consumer application after consumer application, with consumption higher in America than any other, in relative terms, than any other country on earth. And the entire half of Silicon Valley is devoted entirely to finding ways to get more people to buy more useless things that they do not already own. Go, technology, go. Let us, like, why on earth should you have a credit card? You should be able to walk into a store, point at something, your bank account gets debited, and it's delivered automatically by a drone before you get home. Wouldn't that be great, then? Wouldn't that be great? Yeah, maybe great to you, but it has no social value to that whatsoever, or almost none whatsoever. So fine, Silicon Valley and all its social apps. So technology, camera catching man. Why are all those people in Silicon Valley doing phone apps as opposed to carbon capture? Because you just said that would save the world. And if that saving the world was a big deal, don't you not think all those smart people, and there's a lot of smart people there, I'm going to grant that, smart in a narrow sense of the word, why aren't they trying to make carbon capture as opposed to goofy phone apps? Yes, well, yes. But you know, maybe if you think about it carefully and stop making silly glib assumptions about technology, you might have this thought. What happens the day the social media bandwagon profit machine grinds to a halt? No, not because the social media disappears, but it is a license to create billion-dollar companies out of nothing. When that day ends, when all of those phone apps, when your phone is now heating your grilled cheese sandwich, when there's nothing left for your phone to do, on that happy day, what happens to all that brain power in California and in Waterloo and in all the other tech centers of the world? What will they turn their mind to? The greatest destruction of human employment in the history of humanity, right? That's what they're going to do next. So maybe you see spending all that time on phone apps is a good thing. It's buying us time. It's slowing down the advance of robotics. Anything to slow down robotics. Yes, yes. Oh, forget carbon capture and do another phone app. That will be fine. Because we have so many people who are potentially at risk of being unemployed by the robots, that all of those people who could be building robots and are now doing those phone apps, whoa. Society has just cut itself some slack. Do you see how complicated all of this? I like technology, I don't like technology. You like robots? No, you don't like robots. Depends whether your whole family's going to be unemployed by the robots. Oh, yes, Google is so cool. Whoa. Driverless cars are so cool. Uber is so cool. Uber, a business model that's going to last for 10 years. Because at the end of 10 years, you don't need drivers. What happened to their business model? That's like living in a world. There's the marketplace, okay? It creates an empire for 12.5 seconds and then smashes it down while eliminating 1 million jobs in a year. Simple question. Simple question. I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, for those who worship at the altar of technology. What happens if the rate of adoption of this is rivaled by robotics? Oh my. Are you going to be ready? Is society ready? I think we should shut down the Faculty of Engineering. Here and everywhere. No, not forever. Not forever. Come on, let us be realistic. For maybe 10 years. Give us some breathing room. Give us some breathing room. So what's the role of technology? That it has benefits you could hardly deny. And you know, laugh if you want to, that the rate at which carbon dioxide is rising in the environment and the rate at which the temperature appears to be rising in response to it, and the fact that the Congress of the United States is now under the control of people who are science deniers, who apparently can't read, think, or engage in coherent thought of any kind. Sorry, carbon dioxide levels are not going to fall anytime soon. So maybe, you see, the carbon capture guy had actually better be right. You had better be able to find a carbon capture way. And you better find a way to dike up New York at not $3 trillion and bankrupt the United States. So the, well, okay, that's all right. Well, except for New York, well, who cares about the rest of America? Well, New York and California. Dike them up and let the rest flood. Well, see, so okay, well, we've solved that problem. But do you see what I mean? How do you think about this? Not casually, not carelessly, and not making by some foolish assumption saying, I like technology. That's like, whoa, I like breathing. Well, I'm glad you like breathing, ma'am, but it has no intellectual value to you whatsoever. Or I abstain from technology and would like to shut down the Faculty of Engineering. Okay, you're an art student. I understand why you might want to do that, but that is not, don't you think that's not socially responsible kind of thing to do? Do you really want to tell talented people to stop doing their talent, and become gardeners? No, I don't think you want to do that either. Do you understand how you've got to start thinking more critically about things? These are awkward problems. And I hope you didn't sit here thinking that now, but I'm going to work myself up to my climax. I'm working myself up to a high degree of excitement, of course, but not to resolving these contradictions. I hope you don't want me, look, I can see you. They're sitting there expecting, okay, he's going to give me some brilliant formula for resolving the contrast about how exactly you should deal with technology. No, sir, I don't have any magic answers. Magic again, magic, it's about emotion. It's not about using your brain. This is going to be complicated. All those robots, eliminating all those jobs, boy, don't you think the solution is going to be complicated. And carbon capture, if in fact it's even minor economically feasible, well, you better figure out how that's going to work, and you better figure it out fast. And we're just starting. You got to decide whether human nature is easily changed or not. It looks like it could be changed, but not very easily. So how do you deal with that? How do you deal with gender? The robots will kill the male workers' jobs faster than women. Only faster, not instead of. They just eat into women's jobs a little later after they kill all the men, economically, so to speak. So there you are. Ha-ha! And the cool thing is, I like this kind of presentation. I've suddenly decided I like being old. Well, it took me a while to decide. Because you, with your young face, you're going to have to cope with this. I get to safely get into my grave and watch you deal with carbon capture. Do you know how satisfying that is at one level? To know that 50 years from now, some of you might actually hear these words echoing in your brain, telling your great-grandchild this weirdo presentation you heard about apocalypse now. Well, you see, we're going to have a bumpy future unless you can start thinking aggressively, unless you can start challenge every assumption in your head and stop making these gross generalizations about things, which is what lazy people do, what uneducated people do. You're at a university. You're training to be a scholar. I don't care if you're not a graduate student. That doesn't count. If you're are you an undergraduate? Yes. Then you are an apprentice scholar. And if you have any other vision of like, oh, my degree is a job license, you don't belong here. I'm sorry, I'm getting cranky about this kind of stuff. This is about using your brain. Using your brain in a scholarly way as you look for real answers, not fantasy answers. Let's look at a few of the other assumptions, but my goodness, you get enough assumptions plugged into your brain. We're trying to do a cleansing. Sounds like a colonoscopy, but although that might actually be the right analogy for it. So what other peculiar ideas do you have rattling around in your brain that, excuse me, that afflict you as someone who's a social entrepreneur? Well, you know one of them. Changing the world is going to be slow. One step at a time. A journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. A well-known aphorism of that human rights crusader called Mao Zedong. I was being sarcastic for those of you who didn't notice. Just make sure you didn't think that I... See, I don't even know. I'm afraid of being sarcastic, and you actually write it down thinking, oh, goodness, please think. That is one of the most seductively dangerous ideas that anybody can possibly put in your head. Have you even a fantasy about changing the world? Come with me to India. Let's do a gender thing, shall we? Let's be brave. Let's go to India. There is a new charitable endeavor in India. It's a non-profit. It's using technology. Technology is a good thing. We're trying to use technology to help the developing world. And it's very cleverly designed. Agricultural practice. Huge chunk of the Indian population still is in rural villages, rural agricultural villages. And often pursuing agricultural practices that are centuries old. So they've decided that a really good thing to do would be to, and most of the agricultural work in India is done by women, have women describe agricultural improvements, better ways to rotate crops, even on small pieces of property. And to have women describe to other women how to do this and the results you get. So they're actually short videos starring Indian women who are agricultural women describing better agricultural processes. The previous strategy was sending out a pack of mails to tell women that they were farming stupid, so do it this way and it'll be okay. Really, that's a charming way to actually make social change by telling the people you're trying to help that they're kind of dim-witted. So have women serve as role models and do video. Now, of course, there's practically no dependable electrical service in rural India, so this means you run battery packs and you go to rural village after rural village after rural village. You set up a primitive screen with a projector and a battery to show these video examples of how to do better farming. Sometimes it's like including 2 crops together on what are relatively small patches of land. And by the way, the advice is actually well considered. It's been properly researched. It does actually increase agricultural yield in a very large country. Excuse me. So far, so good. And they have now shown a half a million rural women have seen these videos. So what? But they have good intentions. They certainly do to help rural women. Do I not want to help rural women? There's a lot of rural women in India. Why would I not want to help them? 500,000 people have viewed this. It has a budget of a couple of $1 million. I'll budget around $13 million. A slow, laborious journey of 1,000 miles, step by step. So, you've exposed 500,000 rural women to these videos. Some of the women will respond, some will not. But there's one little difficulty before we celebrate this too much. Or do you not like the fact that I'm criticizing a charity? Like kicking a puppy. See, that is, oh, I can see you thinking that. I'm a bad person. See, God. Well, here's one statistic that you should keep in mind. The population of India rises 500,000 every week. 1 week's of population growth we've helped. Get a sense of the scale of the problem? Do you really want your great-grandchildren in this room listening to my great-grandkid telling you about how Indian women are still struggling? Do you really think that like 3 generations of people? By the way, if you do the math, it would take something like that length of time. You really want to tell hundreds of millions of rural Indian women that they should wait for the video to come? All 10 minutes of it? To grow spinach together with... Perhaps not. Perhaps something a little more aggressive than that. But you see, use the technology. I'm making a very, 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 very small effect. But if you were being crafty, if you were thinking carefully, then you might have strange thoughts about how to do it 1 million people a day. Certainly not by schlepping video equipment to every rural village in the country. Oh, I know what's going on. Oh, yes, cell phones. Give everyone in India a cell phone. Yes, fill in the rest of that, by the way. Lots of companies. Now, whoa, Chinese companies, mobile devices, make them cheap. So every person on earth has them. A phone app for every Indian on earth. So cool. They can text each other about not having food. Well, I don't actually think they think it's all that funny. But you see how primitive that is, how naive that is, how unhelpful that is. You want another thought? Should ask this thought, by the way. So, most of the agricultural work in India is done by women.
What are the men doing?
Yes, what are the men doing? That's a thought you might ask yourself. What the hell are the men doing? What are they actually doing? So half the population is farming in rural India. We're talking about rural India. We're not talking about urban India. What are the males doing?
Eating the crop to keep the women employed.
Eating the food. Okay, well, that sounds like it. Eating the food and contributing to the fact that there are 51 births a minute. Drones. Okay, sorry, I mean, it's a bee culture now. So maybe if you really wanted to help rural women in India, you might mobilize half the rural population to help. Might not be a plan. Oh, yeah, but there's an ingrained culture there. So there is. Oh, so now it's culture that doesn't change. First it was human nature that doesn't change, now it's culture that doesn't change. I'm changing the world even though nothing changes. Like, do you understand that intellectually it's not going to get you very far? If you start with the assumption that human nature is unchangeable, culture is unchangeable, okay, then we're going to have billions of people in distress, and then we'll have millions and millions of people in the industrial world unemployed because you can't change behavior. Look, there's a male. He doesn't want to learn. What am I supposed to do? Yeah, sorry, I know, yes, I'm sure you do, sir. I'm sure you do. But I'm sorry. If I was going to point at a man or a woman who's more likely not to want to learn, it's you, not her. Sorry, that's just statistically true. Look, she, for some reason, you're now standing in for all the women on the planet, by the way. She, for example, is prepared to sit down and read quietly. You, I got to force you to read. You sometimes will read under protest. I have to sort of read. She's gone through 4 books and you've read half a paragraph. And what you're really trying to do is figure out how you can stop reading and go hit the person behind you. Or at least run around and chase them because you want to throw something at them. Do you understand that this is like, we have to think about this stuff. There seems to be some reason that you will learn things, read things. Sit quietly, as opposed to running around in circles. Do you understand that, like in the olden days, running around in circles was like hunter, good behavior, as a hunter-gatherer. That was like 50,000 years ago. Got to move on, man, don't you think? Yeah, sorry. Okay, well, you're still thinking about it. That's okay. Please thinking about it. Well, but that's the point. There are powerful social implications here. There is ingrained behavior. There is habit. One of the things we do know that habit can be broken. Even addictive smoking habit can be broken. How would you mobilize unemployed males in rural India? I haven't a clue. But if you're not thinking about it, if you're trying to improve the world, if you wouldn't think about gender, if you wouldn't think about the role of technology, if you wouldn't think about whether the market is master or servant, you're not going to get these things. You're not going to get these things done. So what's the plan? What's the plan? Oh my. Who's going to save us? You know who's going to save us. Government. Only they have the resources that could address this massively. Oh, no, no, not governments. No, no, not governments. Governments are the problem. Crazed, lunatic governments all around the planet. Nigeria, which has a pretend government that cannot even maintain civil order, cannot keep school children safe, cannot keep anyone safe. I really don't like school children being tortured and murdered on their way to school. They're the problem. Get rid of government and replace it with democracy. That's all we need. Yes, yes, the Twitter revolution. Yes, the Arab Spring. Have you noticed? It's the Arab winter now. Twitter. Those crazy cell phones, they were good for something. They were good for overturning dictatorships. By the way, have you noticed, by the way, used effectively in Libya, that has now descended into chaos. What the hell is wrong with your phone? It was supposed to liberate. Bad app. Look, his app was all screwed up. He got rid of one government and couldn't replace it with a coherent government. So now he's got chaos. Are you happy, man, you techie you? But is there a role for that to change the world? Is there a role for that to change government? You want me to be impressed with this thing? Then use it to get rid of Robert Mugabe. And replace him with something that isn't worse. So, is there a role for the social media in driving change in the third world? Maybe. There's no evidence of it having worked yet. Doesn't mean it mightn't. Doesn't mean it mightn't. The election in Nigeria is semi-democratic, and there's a close outcome. Of course, whether there's anyone alternatively to vote for who would improve the situation is also open to question. So government. It can't be seen either as a villain or as a panacea. It depends what you make of it. Let's have the communes return. Oh, there was a problem with them too, so, where are we here? What we are supposed to be is thinking creatively, aggressively, critically. What is the role of government? I remember once, in this country, where government was going to rescue us. Dedicated men and women lobbied, worked, volunteered relentlessly. First asking, and then demanding that the government rise to its responsibility to build a better Canada, to change practice, to overturn the marketplace. Not well-received argument in this conservative, dopey, frozen place. And again, the volunteers marched. Again and again, the volunteers went door to door, soul-destroying. And you know what argument they heard? Can't afford it. Aren't enough resources. It'll bankrupt the country. It'll bankrupt the country. Yes, yes. It'll bankrupt the country. Government cannot do it. One of the phrases was, the government is not Santa Claus. It can't give you presents. Isn't that an intellectual argument? Doesn't that just show you the tone of public debate on public issues when somebody natters on about that analogy to a mythical fat man? Like really and truly, like that's bogus, bogus, bogus. And the volunteers were not deflected. The volunteers did not believe that government was impotent in this circumstance. They did not believe that the money could not be found. And they did not believe that the marketplace could not be overridden. And they were... You see, I want to believe you know what I'm talking about. I really want to know that the young face has some historical information in his mind to inspire him to take action. Because it's worthwhile to know, by the way, that was successful. Political action, door to door, took the marketplace and swept it aside so emphatically 99.9% of Canadians could not imagine the marketplace being returned to this domain. Pushed out of this domain of activity. And the state didn't take a minor role, took a leadership role, which was the whole point of the exercise. All that lobbying and all that goofy argument. No money, no money, no money, no money, no money. Oh, there's money. Like that. That was government engaged. Pushed, forced, argued in favor of engagement. I am talking about... Sorry, I can't hear. I'm near... Healthcare, of course, Medicare, healthcare. Where do you think healthcare came from? The market? No. You marketplace for everything else. But if you're sick, go to the doctor. If you need to go to the hospital, go. And the state will look after you. My God, Mao Zedong would not recognize that argument. I was being sarcastic again, just so you notice. So don't tell me that social action does not work. Don't tell me that you cannot override the norms of society. Don't tell me you can't make the governments of Canada move. And by the way, it did not take forever. It took a couple of decades. Do you have patience? A couple of decades to do something transformational. I don't mind if you take a couple of decades to help all of rural India. A couple of decades, not a couple of centuries. There's a big difference between those two time frames, don't you think? Because I got to watch it happen. I got to watch the creation of Medicare. I got to watch the creation of a Canada where your income has nothing to do with the quality of your health care. I watched that happen. Approvingly, by the way. Approvingly. A norm pursued by almost all the countries of the planet with one great exception. And notwithstanding that great exception is sitting on your doorstep, you turned your back on the great example of America. You use America as an example for many things, but for some strange reason, you actually seem to have a brain in your head. This surprises me. Well, you can actually look at America and see it. Strengths and weaknesses. And decide you will abstain from the weaknesses. But then again, you see, now have I just told you? Have I just told you? Yes, we should all lobby government to fix everything. Really? Fix everything? Fix everything. So I work with charities. You know, I do pro bono. I don't charge. Look at me now. You think, okay, God, he's got charities as clients, capitalist pig. I work with charities pro bono. Now, I must admit, after they engage my services, they regret they did so. But I have to sit through charitable meetings like this with the boards of directors of charities whose names you'd recognize, and to protect the guilty, I shall not name them. But they know who they are. And I speak of the fact that frequently I've been asked because their finances are imperiled. They don't have the resources to satisfy their mission. So they thought asking an economist about the resource issue would make sense. It does, actually. And so I say, what are the what are your financing, what are the present financing arrangements? We get a government grant, and we've been told that the grant is probably going to be reduced or eliminated. And I say, and well, what's the ratio of private support to public support? Well, our public money is about 99% of what we run on. And how long have you done this? Oh, well, for about 15 years. I'm not making this up, ladies and gentlemen. I'd have to make anything up. We live in so strange a world that why would anyone make things up? And that's the issue. I seem to be having battery failure, so I don't know what that means with respect to the cameras. So maybe some technical person needs to make sure we have useful video. But I'm not, we still have video. Okay, so, well, the only thing that counts is the video, so I'm going to keep talking while they see if they can get one of the other mics back on. But understand. So I asked them about, you know, don't you think it's time to do some private fundraising? I'm thinking, because I'm trying to be diplomatic, I can be. I struggle to be diplomatic, to be honest, but you know, okay, let's not piss everyone off to begin with. So I ask, well, you know, don't you think that's been taking a bit of a risk to spend 10 or 15 years? Shouldn't, when you got the first grant, you should have thought, well, okay, I got public money, that's good, the government's supporting me. Now I must get myself off this public money as quickly as I can and provide value that will persuade private donors to actually. And then if I still keep getting public money, well, that's bonus. Then I can do more and more. But d'accord, I will not be hostage to the peculiarities of public policy of the federal and provincial governments. And the answer is they do not do that. And then I say, well, okay, now we better do private fundraising. You know, it's a little late, but let us do it. You have enough money for 6 months, so let's talk about fundraising. Typically, I'm discussing with the board of directors, and I will say now, of course, typically, what happens in this case is boards of directors, who often have connections into the community, will go ask all their friends for money. Now, it's not a good long-term strategy, but you're trying to stay afloat for another 6 months. You get 6 months of public money. Say if you can get 6 months of private money, just, you know, begging money. You can always get some money by begging. You can't go beg second time, but you can get it. So you live to fight for a whole year, and then you focus on some powerful demonstration of your value to society. Powerful, not 1,000 million steps inch forward. Something that is big and dramatic. At least you promise something big and dramatic with some coherent plan of how you will make a big change and how the donors can be part of changing the world in a real, tangible, manifest, quick way. And then I have to listen to people say, charitable people who are trying to save the world, oh, I can't ask my friends. That's kind of embarrassing to come to say, you know, friend, I'm playing golf with you. We're spending $250 on green fees, but like, can you write a check for $1,000 for this charity I'm associated? Oh, I can't. That'd put my friend. That'd be like awkward. Damn right, it's awkward. That's why he's write the check. Of course, it's awkward. Friend asked me for money. Well, I'm not going to say for a charity. It's his favorite charity. Thinking, oh God, he's going to ask $2,000. I better give him the $1,000 check before he asks for more money. And many people are reluctant even to do that. Then they want to send it a piece of direct mail. Because it's like anonymous. Couldn't we just send out letters to everybody saying please? With the 22 letters I get on a daily basis from charities asking for money. Now you see? That's why these assumptions have to be challenged. It's not about is government good or government bad. Sometimes you're addicted to its money. That's bad. And sometimes you can make them move. Charities have made governments of this country move repeatedly. Charities have forced the governments of Canada, to have some of the most aggressive anti-smoking legislation on the planet. So yes, you can get government to move. But you can't wait for government to do everything, and you cannot wait for them to fund everything. Don't you see that your world is way more complicated? So it's not just about a pro-government, anti-government. It's about thinking about carefully in whatever possible circumstance. What is the crafty way to do it? What is the best way to do it? What is the smart way to do it? How do I bob and weave? How do I make a powerful argument? How do I find what the right argument is? How can I be a superb marketer? What's my vision statement? To change the world, one step at a time. Oh, yes, please. I know what that's an excuse for. No. I have a plan. 12 million women in India. All right, million a month then, if we don't want to do a million a day. You work your way up to 1 million a day when you start with 1 million a month. And attract people's attention. Or do we make a... Oh, no. Oh, I know what we should do. The last great assumption. This is what we should do. Can your hand? Hold his? No, no. That one. We should work together. We must bring people together. We must bring groups together. We must work collaboratively, harmoniously. Now, he's got preferences and she's got preferences, so we will have to have a nice compromise where everyone is happy. We'll do a little game theory and figure out which is the best, least objectionable policy. Do you really think, look, we've been holding hands, singing Kumbaya for a long period of time, and the world is still in distress. And I'm a little hard-pressed to understand how all this hand-holding gets us anywhere. Now, you see, you don't want to think again. And now you think, I just told you, go solo. Save the world all by yourself. Don't need any help. Did I say that? I did not say that. I said singing is stupid. That's what I actually said. And you see, now again, you want to leap to a different solution. We want lone agents acting like crazy people. No, we don't. Please, no one on a solo mission. On the other hand, we can't all agree on something. Is it clear we can't all agree on something? The University of Waterloo Senate can't ever agree on practically anything any of the time. We'll delete that from the tape. But it's hard to get agreement. It's hard to get agreement to do something decisive. It's hard to do it at a university. It's hard to do it in a corporation. It is very hard to do in a charity, because as soon as I make some guidance, I make some comment. And then you say, yes, well, but that will disturb, and then you just name someone powerful. No, if we're going to get donations, we can't, get people too excited. Well, God forbid people should get excited and write checks. But for the person you get excited, boy, I want to support this. She says, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard, get out of my face. Yeah, but if you're really going to do powerful effect, you might even have to annoy some people, maybe make them angry. You might be lobbying to push the marketplace out of health care and to annoy every physician in the country. You don't suppose we got Medicare by getting the doctors to agree with the social reformers? Oh my word, you live in fantasy land then for sure. Sometimes it's about confrontation. Okay, one of you's got to go. I can be your collaborator, I can be your collaborator, but your interests are opposed to each other. And the only way I could collaborate with you is dumbing it down so nothing happens. So you're a luck man. He and I are best buds. We're at war with you. I don't care if you're a surgeon and you think the marketplace rules. We've decided that we're opposed to you. Edge. Edge. Now, look, there's somebody thinking, I've just said we should go to the barricades. We have actually a whole bunch of picket signs outside. That's what the pizza's for in the reception, to con you into like demonstrating about, I don't know. Well, I would like to actually see you in a demonstration parade. I think you'd faint at the sight of holding a picket sign that said, up with food for sick people. Like, But it is. This is not about controversy for its own sake. It's not being confrontational for its own sake, but it is sometimes recognizing that if you're going to make a strong argument, you will make some strong opponents. So that's how you change the world, if you're doing it aggressively. So, ladies and gentlemen, of all the great problems affecting afflicting humanity. How are we going to solve them? Full frontal attack? Probably not. Crafty. With a plan. Like a military strategy. So, social reformer, are you? Do you see yourself as Napoleon? Deploying an army? No? Oh! Okay, well, she will. They always need second lieutenants, right? She'll deploy the army. She might send you out on an expedition to, you know, distract the enemy, which can work sometimes. Well, the full frontal attack comes from this person, and nobody notices what's happening. And shame that player into taking action. I like to end with a quotation from one of my favorite change masters. I'm going to grab it because I'm going to read it to you so as not to mangle the quotation. But this, to me, is something you want to think about if you're changing the world. Most presentations about charitable endeavor don't refer to this person for some reasons which are mysterious to me. This was a master of the management of change. In fact, of the implementation of change. So perhaps we should look at what the master said you should be doing and the context in which you are doing it. This is in translation. For the great majority of mankind are satisfied with appearances as though they were realities, and are often more influenced by things that seem than those that are. Machiavelli, the Prince, the Medicis, Florence. Crafty character. But he was interested in making things change. So, all those thoughts in your head, mobilize them rigorously, aggressively, critically examine every single one of them, abandon the cliches, the assumptions, the half-formed thoughts, the undocumented ones, the ones with no data, the ones with no context, and plot and scheme to come to the rescue of this planet before its environment passes the point of no return. Before millions of persons, billions of persons are in mounting distress. And enough are in distress at this very moment. That's how you're going to change the world. With your brain. Not with righteous indignation and really positive intentions. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now go do something. Go do something.
All right, whose mind is now changed? We have a question for Larry.
Is this working?
You just need to yell. That's going to record.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so one of the really interesting things I pick up on is a question you asked. You said, what other peculiar ideas do you have rattling around in your brain that afflict you as a social entrepreneur? And I had a really fascinating conversation with one of my friends in which he said, I don't think you're doing enough to change the world because I think you still think that there are parents. And I said, what do you mean? Of course there are parents. Like, I have some and you have some. And he said, no, I think you still think that somebody is like in charge of the world. Like I think you still think that somebody, you know, there's like people like governments who are just kind of gonna take care of things. And I sort of realized that, yeah, he was sort of right. I was sort of thinking about things like that. And so I spent a lot of time trying to unthink that, to really just like get myself into the mindset of, yeah, there's nobody who's in charge. Like if I don't fix it, or if somebody else from this room or other rooms like this doesn't fix it, there's going to be nobody. And so I'm wondering if that, I mean, you kind of talked about that in the government section, but I'm wondering if that's another mindset issue that you've encountered, and maybe if you have anything to say to it.
Absolutely. Your friend is absolutely right. I have spent this ridiculous amount of time in the classroom, and I describe the stupidity of the world, and I describe things that don't make any sense. And I am constantly accosted by students who say, yeah, but there's an evil plan. No, there's not an evil plan. That's the point. There is no plan at all. Like again and again, I'm trying to talk about all the things going wrong on the planet, typically economically in my classes. So I'm discussing the government of the United States and their utterly incoherent lack of anything. And then invariably, I have a student who will say, but you know, he's got a plan. Usually referring to the President of the United States. He's got a plan. No, he doesn't have a plan. He doesn't have a plan. You keep thinking he's a plan. And then we will be doing commercial history. We'll be looking at General Motors or a big company. It doesn't matter which one. And if we describe like General Motors, the old General Motors, which is now gone, but they have a plan, right? No, they don't have a plan. That's it. They're making it up as they go, one instant at a time. Your friend is quite, like in my view, and I think it is particularly an affliction of the young to want to really believe the world is not as chaotic as it appears. Actually, I get that. I understand that. The world will be, even if there was someone in control, being young, trying to decide who you are, what your character is, what your goals are, what your mission in life is, what your career should be. Yeah, that's kind of spooky. Am I going to live with someone? And what crazy person would live with me? Like, when you have all of these thoughts in your head, that is an intimidating enough set of changes. And then to have society looking like nothing is in charge, you don't want to believe that. It's still nice to have a parent. That's a good analogy, actually, a parent backstopping you. Your friend is correct. My experience tells me, by the way, if I was going to go through every one of assumption, Tanya and I actually started with a long list of assumptions. We narrowed them down because otherwise we'd be here till midnight. Literally, those were just a few examples of these ideas floating around in your brain. Okay, let's be really clear. I've done this, my work professionally for 40 years. For 40 years, I have been looking for who's in charge because I want to give them advice. As you can plainly see, I like giving advice. And who can I give advice to? I will find the leverage point. I didn't think government was really in control, except transiently, temporarily. So I was trying to find where the control was. Where's the leverage point? There isn't one. That is actually scary. I'm sorry, I can't make it better. So if something's going to get fixed, you're going to fix it. But you're not going to fix it with emotional reactions and just impulses, because that's not going to work either. So no one's in charge but you, all of us together. Oh, my word.
A question back here.
Yes?
You mentioned social purpose, but really we're lacking as human beings viable social purpose. In other words, to drive us forward, we rely on competition to the excess of war and so on. And this is just really destroying life on Earth. So nobody gives much thought to what we should do with these great talents we've been given. Now, it has to do with things like raising our consciousness. It has to do with aiming high, aiming big, be co-creators of the cosmos, okay? And it means that profits and power have to serve these higher social purposes. They don't right now, okay? Now, how to put this into practice, that's the question for this generation. That has to be given much more time. But we have to have very positive social purposes that through collaboration and so on, that we evolve. And it's a continuous evolving, developing process. There's never any final answer when it comes to social purpose.
Well, I certainly agree with your comment. this generation needs to be doing some of this stuff because some of the problems are getting so acute. They will be irreversible. And there are challenges of all kinds. Your comments about competition, again, if we go through all the assumptions, we'll never get done. But the assumption that competition is always good. Now, the truth is, sometimes I think competition is good. I think he's be a little lazy if he didn't have some competition pushing him. On the other hand, this guy's a crazy competitor, and he's trying to push people down the stairs to be successful. Like, the truth is, again, we need to think about it really carefully. Your point that we need to think about the things, absolutely the case. We need to, what are we trying to accomplish? What are our values? And they've got to be defined. I don't actually believe they can be vague, sort of, oh, well, I'm trying to make things better. What do you mean better? Like, better how? Better why? Better what? What is your purpose? What is the actual, what are you trying to get accomplished? And you have to measure it. So again, but it is about thoughtfulness. It is not just about good intentions. Yes?
Is it heretical to think that social change or the majority of social change can or perhaps even should come from for-profit businesses and not like nonprofits?
I actually don't care where positive social change comes from. If it comes from a private entity, that's fine. If it comes from a public entity, that's fine. If it comes from a non-governmental, public-private cooperative thing, I don't care. I don't even care if it comes from a group of private individuals who aren't an official anything, but a group of individuals who have decided some things need to be done better, and they just put their shoulders to it and get it done. See, that's what I actually think. We've got to stop assuming that change comes in a particular package or in a particular way. I think it comes because there's so many problems, for example. I think it's going to come in different ways depending on what the problem is. Sometimes it's going to come from government. Sometimes it's going to come from the private sector. Sometimes it's going to come from an old dopey charity which suddenly stirs itself and sees its big opportunity to change the world. And then it comes from a new charity, where somebody decides, okay, there is not a charity doing X, and I'm going to create that charity, and I will do it however I have to. Or there's a person, I think, I don't know, or better not, I better point at someone over there, someone at the back. I can't, sorry, I was going to point at someone I could see. I'll point at the person, because I'm nearsighted, I can't see the person at the back. They just want to be rich. Their plan to save the world is be rich and give the money to your charity. They don't know that yet. So your goal is to let her get rich, the person I can't see and don't really point at, so that you can get it funded. What would happen if one clever person got together with one rich person? Then you see being rich might not be a bad thing. And there have been several examples in the past of rich people, notwithstanding that they were rich as sin, notwithstanding that, and part of their life, they were unreconstructed capitalists who in today's marketplace would be breaking the law. And suddenly they decided, let there be libraries. Yes, Andrew Carnegie, capitalist industrialist to the max, who decided he would die poor. And that the rich man dying rich was just really bad. And he had this supported, he didn't invent the idea, but he supported it aggressively. Information should be free. Idea is 100 years old, you techies. Don't you internet people tell me you invented information should be free. It's an old idea. You piss me off when you look like you don't have any historical information at all. Which, by the way, also helps you decide how you're going to change the world, by looking at examples like that. So give books away. Here's a capitalist destroying the publishing industry. Or so the publishing industry thought at the time. Don't you see how that's provocative? So maybe your strategy to change the world is look at everyone in your class. Figure out who's going to be the rich dude and be their very best friend. So 12 years from now, when you have your charitable idea perfectly formed, you say, man, I need 50 million. And he might actually give it to you. You think I'm speaking hypothetically, and I am not. I know real people, real rich people, who have committed $250 million to charitable endeavor. So don't tell me this doesn't happen. Help the rich people of the world. Many of them have no imagination whatsoever. And they would like to have impact. They might like to have some heritage, some legacy. Feel sorry for the rich person. Help him or her realize immortality with your ideas and their money. If you know someone, by the way, UW needs money, have them talk to me.
How will the next 7 billion impact our world? And do you think we'll actually even reach that next 7 billion of people actually being on this planet?
Will we hit 7 billion? Almost certainly. Just forward momentum is going to drive that. Forward momentum and the baby rate of India alone means India will replace China as the most populous country on earth. And whether that's a record to be celebrated, of course, is a matter of question. So we're likely to hit 7 billion for sure. Now, one of the interesting things is, in much of the industrial world, the population is already falling. So we may be getting close to peak population, especially if India gets rich. Rich people don't have babies. It defies common sense. When you're poor in a rural village, you reproduce like a rabbit. As soon as you have money, you think, kid or a car? And you opt for the car. I'm not making a joke. That the research is like overwhelmingly clear. As soon as you could afford 12 children, you want 1.5 perfect children. It's mathematically a little goofy, sir. Just, you know, have 1 or 2, but don't. So we're going to hit 7. But ironically, you see, just all this complication stuff. Ironically, in the middle of all this, one of our problems might actually be sort of solving itself. Our tendency to reproduce like rabbits. Unless, of course, the robots make us so poor, we now reproduce as we start getting poorer, which will confuse the machines all get out. For example, an old idea that has been around for a long time is coming back again. This old idea, which has been bandied about ever since people started worrying about technology, was that we should guarantee everyone an annual income, whether you work or not. But how would we fund that? Oh, the answer is ridiculously simple. Tax the robots. They don't vote. And I, for one, am not in favor of giving them the franchise. If that means I am, you know, species-centric, so be it. I think there was one question. I think we got to watch time as well, sir.
So for all of us rebels and risk takers, how is social media going to lead us in the future? And can we utilize it, or will Big Brother shut us down?
I have the power of social media to change the world. It should have that power. It should be able to mobilize 1 million people, 2 million people. It already mobilizes people for stupid purposes. Well, it does. You know it does. So I have to believe, again, but I have to rely on you. I'm serious. I have to rely on you, people your ages, to do this, right? I have to rely on you to sort of get over the... In some ways, I see social media as like a tiny kid. Like just doing kid stuff. You know, kids they play around. Well, kids should play around. So maybe the social media have to play around with Twitter and goofy stuff and Facebook and pictures and Instagram and Pinterest and the whole bit until they get serious and say, let us not just overturn a government. Let us replace a government. That's entirely different from getting people out on the street saying, go away, go away. How do you get them on the street saying, build this, build this? How do you get the social media to silence the bigots. Because right now, on this planet, the bigots is social media's greatest friend. So now you're a demagogue, a racist demagogue, bottom-crawling scum. And the internet allows you to magnify your voice across the planet. So, fine. Where are the billion non-bigots drowning out the crazed person? I am cursed by historical knowledge. Sometimes I think I should have never read a history book in my entire life, but then I would have nothing to say to you. I look to history to try to help me understand the chaos of the world in which I live. And I am regrettably mindful of the fact that the first person who used broad-scale mass media, yes, was Adolf Hitler. The first person who actually understood that broadcast radio, simultaneously broadcasting, could create a sense of community where none ever existed before. If you were a politician, you'd have to go to town after town after town and make the same stupid speech. It was never magnified. It was never dramatic. And then Adolf Hitler discovered you could stand in front of a microphone, talk to his whole country, and work them up into a frenzy of racist lunacy. That was the first use of our media. I have been waiting for it to grow up. Now, it may be that the social media in its aggressive form is going to finally turn the tables on our demagogues. You want to know how to do it? Tell us. I'll tell you how to do it. Well, I tell you what you need to do. Do you want to control the government of the United States? It'd be nice that they had a government under control, as that person's comment. Nice that they could actually have a government that was coherent, that the politicians could read, and did actually read. Do you know how you can do it? It is all not that difficult. It would be a social media thing. Mr. Obama came this close to doing it, till his imagination utterly failed him. Which is to use the social media to increase the participation rate. A minority of people are going to choose the next president of the United States. And elect the Congress of the United States. You could make that change. You social media expert, you. And you would practice your attempt at raising the participation rate. And don't have to raise it by much, right? And you will change, just look at the numbers. I'm just giving a factual description of how finely balanced the political system is. Because most people don't vote, including young people. So, you want to, oh good. So, no, but seriously. So if social media is your media, if social media is the media of a younger person, and you traditionally don't vote, then maybe the social media is the perfect way to get you to vote. And you'll practice doing this before you take over the government of the United States by practicing it on an election in this country this year, where the outcomes are even more finely balanced. Since we form governments, they're actually like real governments, they get things done. Whether you like what they do is a separate issue, but they get them done. And governments in Canada don't get majorities anyway. Couple of percentage points. Couple of percentage points. It has happened, by the way. Is this social media's great calling? I don't know. But you're supposed to be the experts in it, you people in this room, because of your ages. And I'll cheer you on.